All right, we are before the pitch, where we just bitch about the Mets and the Yankees because you can love New York baseball no matter what shade of blue you're wearing. I am Billy, and I am back from a very long break. I apologize for not being around.
Hey, don't apologize for being on a wonderful vacation with some time with your family, and you told me some wonderful things that your family did this holiday, and we're all happy to have you back.
Yeah, it's good to be back. I know we did get together for a small episode over the holidays, but for the most part, I've been a little MIA. Just loosening things back up, getting back into it. We'll have a little more consistent content coming at you going forward.
And boy, what a day you picked to come back. Now, keep in mind, everybody, we're still doing our episode tomorrow as planned, the decade in review of the Yankees and Mets. Right now, this is a bit of an emergency episode with all of the stuff that was unraveled today. Now, before we get into speculation and opinions, we're going to start off with quote unquote facts. All of these are still alleged. Nothing in terms of the Red Sox yet has been confirmed through investigation. Technically, nothing from the Astros has either, and if you can already tell, this is it's one heck of a mess. And we're going to try our best to make sense of it first and lay a ground rule before we continue with everything else.
Yeah, and we did find out today that the MLB will be passing their sentence on the Astros very shortly, probably within the next 2 weeks. Now, that's when we're gonna get hard evidence on what happened, what is happening, and how it all went down. Now, I know we have videos of John Boy and all other internet content creators for baseball supporting the allegations that were made against the Astros, but as of right now, beyond the evidence that we've seen videoly and audioly, there is not really any hard evidence of what exactly the Astros did. I get it.
That we've seen, because like we have figured out today, there is a lot more stuff that they just haven't even told us yet.
Yes, and I think that's going to go to the heart of this investigation from the MLB. You will find out things you didn't know before. You'd find out the ways that this entire plan was executed, and potentially copied.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about that for a second. We have a brand new allegation coming out from The Athletic today, where the Red Sox have been accused of an elaborate sign stealing method involving runners on second base and a video review room in their clubhouse. Now, the details of that beyond like the actual player to player transfer are a little fuzzy. The players had a system built on a runner on second base relaying the message to the batter on what pitch was coming based on a sequence that they memorized from video. Now, they did some of this before the games, and they did some of this supposedly during the games. Now, during the games is where it becomes an issue. Before the games is actually legal.
The issue comes from, and keep in mind, we have to just go. You and I are not subscribed to The Athletic. We have not read a thing. We are
Hearing everything.
we've been doing a lot of reading, extensive research today. We are confident in what we are saying and reflecting that. We are also going to be referencing an article written by Andy Martino, which I have up right on another tab. But so when we talk about the video thing, there's a couple catches with this. They were using the replay room, which is where they look at instant replay. You're only allowed to look at this screen if you are looking to decide whether you are going to use instant replay or not. That's the only time you're allowed to use it, especially mid-game. You cannot go back there mid-game for this purpose, especially when, and here's really the main thing that's going to separate the Red Sox from the Yankees and the Yankees' similar allegations. The Yankees' allegations, because they are saying they used a similar system, came in 2015 up until 2017, in that range, before the Apple Watch scenario. incident. The significance of the Apple Watch incident is two things. One, according to Andy Martino's article, the Yankees were not using the Apple Watches. That was the Red Sox. The Yankees used the bullpen phone, to make a call, assumingly Larry Rothschild, to someone in the replay booth to say, was that really a ball or a strike? Technically still illegal. But the thing to understand about the Apple Watch thing is that is a hard line. Because after that is when rules were enforced and clarified and warnings were given to major league teams. This has come out today, not just the Yankees and Red Sox, all 30 teams. There's another tweet came in by Andy, I think it was Andy Martino, someone else, or Jeff Passan, said that Rob Manfred said they have assurance from the Red Sox this will not happen again or nothing of the sort. So there is a hard line event where a warning was ensued and an understanding was made between baseball, particularly the Red Sox, and the commissioner of baseball. There's a mutual understanding of cannot use technology for the purpose of stealing signs, and the replay room is specifically mentioned in that, especially mid-game. Now, the Yankees did it before that. Before this was all a thing, and is believed to be a lot of teams were doing that. Red Sox did it after, which means they are violating a harsher rule. So yes, it is technically worse that the Red Sox did it when the Yankees did it, but because of the timing.
Yeah, completely agree. While it is basically, in essence, the same system, or at least in overview a similar system, because of when it was done, it should be a harsher penalty, if any. Now, where does this leave us today in terms of how we view the 2018 Red Sox? Well, we understand that they had a historically successful regular season. You know, they crushed, 118 wins?
I don't know if they got to 100. I think it was like 116. 118, I believe, is the record by the 0-1 Mariners. And the Red Sox, I want to say, are just below that. It's not much, though.
Anyway, an insanely successful season.
And a very low number of strikeouts. That is a consistency between them and the Astros. We'll come back around to that part later. Continue, Billy.
Yes. The strikeouts are kind of like red flags in this scenario. You know, we talked very much of the season about how the Astros don't strike out. The Astros don't strike out. The Astros don't strike out. Well,
as a matter of fact, one of our first videos we ever did on this channel, going back to last year, was analyzing similarities between teams that make it to the World Series. A very common denominator, I think we looked up 6 out of 10 years, the team that led the league in least amount of strikeouts made to the World Series.
Yeah, I believe it was something along those lines.
It
doesn't now with that said, it doesn't prove causation, but it's a correlation that is a trend with the quality of your hitter, right? Now moving back to the Red Sox, one fact that's been brought up over and over again is that this system that they used during the regular season, they were not able to duplicate during the postseason because of how often teams change signs during a playoff game. They would change signs with nobody on base. They would change signs many times with people on base. They would change signs in the middle of an at-bat. This happened consistently throughout the playoffs, and it created a situation where you could not effectively memorize signs, figure out what signs they were using fast enough, and then relay the message before they changed them again. Now, maybe in small situations it came into effect, but overall, the bulk of the playoffs, they were not able to use this system whatsoever. What does that mean in terms of how we look at the Red Sox championship? I don't think it really tarnishes it all that much.
It's tricky because there's two ways you could look at it. If that is to be believed, the Red Sox beat the Yankees fair and square, and it is, I will openly admit, the Red Sox were a better team in 2018 than the Yankees. Yankees were a very good team in 2018. Red Sox were a better team in 2018. So if that's to be believed, then you could say playoffs are the playoffs. That is what it is, and they won that one fair and square. Then you start thinking of things like the butterfly effect. When you start adding things up. So if they were doing this all season, have they not be doing that? How does this affect standings at the end of the year? Not just for them, but the teams that they've played, the teams that they've affected. How does this affect playoff seeding? These are things we can never know because we don't have like the Doctor Strange multiverse ability to see what would have happened. But keep in mind, this past year, that same Red Sox team took a little bit of a nosedive. Maybe nosedive is a little bit too harsh. I think they had 85 win season. That's still a good team, but they were not what they were before. Now,
and they did not make the playoffs. More importantly,
and then you look at, okay, well, is that coincidental or will it happen? Is that a result that we don't know? Again, these are things where we can't just sit here and say for truth that's what this is, but you can't dismiss anything. I think that's the biggest takeaway, is nothing can simply be dismissed at this point.
And let me go back to a point I made a little bit earlier. Now, we're talking about sign stealing during a game, using video evidence during a game, using the replay room. That is the portion in which all of this is technically illegal in essence of the rule. The Red Sox can watch as much film as they want leading up to the game, before the game, after the game, on an off day, whatever. They can watch as much video as they want, memorize the signs, memorize changing signs to batters whatsoever. That's where that's just gamemanship to a certain extent. There is nothing that any team can really do to prevent that, nor can the MLB, because if you're going to use the same signs from game to game for a pitcher, well, and the other team figured it out, okay.
And guess what? It's all broadcast on national TV anyway.
Yeah, it's kind of frowned upon, but at the same time, it's not illegal for doing that. It's only the stuff that occurs during the game.
Especially after the Apple Watch incident. Again, we cannot emphasize that is the hard line that separates the Red Sox from the Yankees, who supposedly did similar things along with a lot of other teams in baseball. Now, what the Red Sox did is still not near what the Astros did.
Nowhere close.
No. What the Astros did, here's the difference. Astros were getting signs streamed to them in real time and relaying the message to the batter in real time. At all times, you were able to do that.
Without the caveat of someone being on second base to give you that sign. Think about it.
The Red Sox had to have someone
on second base. Like, if there was a runner on first, it didn't work. If there was a runner on third, didn't work. They had to be on second base.
Yes. They had to be on second base, and they were getting the feed from that game, but it wasn't a real-time instantaneous thing. You had to go back and look and reflect on maybe the at-bat before. Not so much looking at it, there's my sign that's coming.
Yeah.
It was reflecting on old at-bats, figuring out what it is, getting on second base.
Relaying it in real time then.
Yes, because that is a big difference.
It also relies on the batter on second base being able to memorize the signs.
Yeah, and being able to see those signs.
Not everybody can do that.
Yeah.
Not every player can memorize signs like that. Some players are better than others. Some players are very bad at it. It's just a thing that some people can and or cannot do.
Yeah.
So that's another part of this that makes it significantly less egregious than what the Astros did. On top of that, you have to take into account the accusations of the Astros of using electronic buttons sending signals to the batter, as well as the video evidence of the banging, or whatever we want to call it.
Yeah.
And then the hands up, hands down thing on the fence.
Yeah. As far as what we know, the Astros turned the dial up to 11 on this whole thing.
And that's what separates this whole situation from what the Red Sox did.
And we already discussed what separates them from what the Yankees did. So we see three different levels of violation.
For sure. Now, if I read this correctly from a third-party source, I don't know. Like we said, we don't have the Athletic. What we read from a third-party source is that there are other stories that they're pursuing in relationship to the sign stealing accusations of other teams, not just the Astros, not just the Red Sox, not just the Yankees. Now, the Yankees are currently not in an investigation or
At this
accused.
moment, the Yankees are safe, but buckle up and pay attention. That could change in 5 minutes from now. That can change in 5 months from now.
And I am extremely confident that the Mets are not involved in this scandal, because guess what? If the Mets were actually cheating, man, were they bad at it the last couple years. It certainly wasn't helping them.
But that does not mean you should not be paying attention if you're a Mets fan. There's a reason for that, and there's a reason why the Yankees should be paying attention. If you are a Yankee fan, this should not be exciting to you. This should be concerning to you, and here's why. We keep looking at the common link between the 17 Astros and the 18 Red Sox is a guy named Alex Cora, a guy involved in both organizations. Now, what does that have to do with the Yankees? A friend of his who was also a part of the 17 Astros and has been named, allegedly, as also having a big hand in it, Carlos Beltran, who right after came and worked for the Yankees. So you can't help but wonder the possibility of, if Cora can bring it from the Astros to the Red Sox, is it possible Beltran could have brought it from the Astros to the Yankees? And my best guess is no, and I'll get to that in a sec, but this puts light on an interview, a clip from an interview that's been going around that you actually introduced me to a couple months ago, which is the after Game 2 in London. They said, oh, so what are the Yankees doing better? And then instantly, Carlos Beltran saying, oh, there's a better team. Beltran discussion when he really doesn't need to. And he says he pays a lot of attention to detail. You know what I mean? He gives a smile and he gives a wink. He's like, Carlos Beltran, a fantastic guy. And he keeps emphasizing Carlos Beltran. At first, you're like, well, obviously, so we see this guy's having an effect, and that's a good thing. You can't help but wonder, is that his little nod to Carlos? I know what you're doing. You better stop. Is that what that could be? I don't know. You can't help but wonder. Now, am I stretching too much? I don't think we are stretching too much because, as I said before, I don't think anyone's in a position to dismiss anything. Now, the reason why I do not think the Yankees did, at least in this way, is because we said the Astros and the Red Sox had a low amount of strikeouts. Yankees have way too many strikeouts. You would think if the Yankees did this, they would not have struck out as much as they did. If you look at Gary try to hit a slider and Giancarlo, they definitely did not know those were coming. That's why I don't think. And the second reason why I don't think the Yankees did is because right when the article came out, Judge retweeted it with the eyeball emojis, like the OMG. We also saw CC Sabathia in a clip that's going to be on a show called HBO called The Shop, where he's kind of dropping a few F-bombs talking about the situation. You would think if the Yankees had something to hide or knew they had something they could get caught on, these two guys of all people would know better, would keep their mouths shut and not insert themselves into that. So this logic leads me to believe I don't think the Yankees did, but I'm not going to be surprised if they do. Now, Billy, why should the Mets fans be paying attention to this?
Well, obviously you've brought up Carlos Beltran, our good friend. He seems to be involved in all of it. Him being our manager is very concerning right now because you don't know what his fate is, right? He could be suspended tomorrow. He could be punished. You don't know. The only people who know are the MLB. Now, With that said, there have been several reports saying that no player from the Astros in 17 is going to be punished. Carlos Beltran, of all things, was a player. He was not part of management. While he potentially had a big hand in devising the scheme, the sign stealings may have been the person actually watching the screen. We don't know. He's always been well regarded in terms of being able to identify pitch sequences and such. He has a knack for that. But if the reports are true and they say that no player is going to be punished, well, Beltran was a player from that, and therefore that would mean that he's not being punished. But then they could mean no current player.
Yeah, and that makes you wonder: would he wind up falling under the category of like a unique circumstance or a unique contributor apart from the rest of the players? And I think you and I both agreed when this started to unravel, players should not be punished for this. This is a systematic problem, and you can't blame the players for going along with the system that's put in place for them. So I'm not going to sit here and say F Altuve, F Springer. I'm not going to say that. This is a managerial and a front office and industrial problem. But we don't know. Does Carlos Beltran kind of cross into that gray area? We don't know yet.
We don't know yet. The other thing is, too, now that the Red Sox have been brought into these allegations and whatnot, we have a large sample size of Alex Cora being involved in such allegations from his managerial time with the Astros and his managerial time with the Red Sox. With that said, does that mean that the MLB would be willing to punish a person such as Alex Cora because he has now been named twice in this, in separate instances with two separate teams? You know, we talked very briefly about, can the MLB punish another team for what the Astros did because they want to punish the person? These are conversations we have to have because my team is involved in this. Your team is kind of involved because of the guy on my team now.
Yeah.
And it all circles around what is going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any dispute really that something happened, because I think we all certainly agree that something happened. But to what extent, we still don't know. And we're not going to find out until these punishments come down, when MLB releases the information of why they're being punished. I just really hope that, for the sake of my team, not so much the sake of Carlos Beltran, but for the sake of my team, that he doesn't get punished. Because now we're talking about, if he's suspended for an extended period of time, I'm missing my manager for, what, half a season? A season? Like, what are these suspensions going to be? Is it 2 games? 2 games? All right, whatever. Fine. We'll deal with it. If 2 games affect the outcome of your season, well, you probably weren't good enough to make the playoffs anyway.
It gets really, really messy. This is about as messy as you can make this.
Yeah, because it's involving multiple teams, some that potentially were involved in this, others that weren't. And then there's a whole bunch of teams that haven't been named, that supposedly they have sources saying that they were doing something, but nobody actually knows yet.
And so let's draw our attention to the Astros super quick. We were just having a conversation with someone on Twitter right before starting this. You can't help but wonder, regardless of the everyone else, do the Astros become the Alex Rodriguez of this giant mess? Meaning, you kind of get the feeling like Alex Rodriguez is the scapegoat for the steroid era, one punishment to ruin them all, to kind of cleanse MLB of the problem by punishing someone so severely and hounding someone so severely. It makes you feel like the whole problem went away, like the scapegoat to take the fall for everybody. You can't help but wonder, do the Astros, because they were the first one, and up until this point, the most severe violator, they're the ones who get the hammer, to the one punishment to rule everybody. We've all kind of thought, up until this point, MLB, they keep saying they want to deter anyone else from doing this again. So we know it's going to be a hard punishment. Now, if we find out more teams are doing it, I can't help but wonder, does that going to make the punishment even more severe?
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is fair to the Astros, mind you. I don't know if that's fair to force them to take the fall for literally everybody.
Yeah, or at least some of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a question of it's the question of the integrity of the game, right? How much is the integrity of the game worth to the MLB?
Mm-hmm.
And I think to the fans, it's worth quite a bit. You know, we're looking at it from the outside, saying, you know, slam the hammer down on the Astros, make it so no team does this ever again. But for the competitive integrity of the MLB, is it worth submitting a team to another basically like tank fest that the Astros did in the first place just to send a message? I don't know. There's also the question, and I'm not going to take credit for this, though I do think it's a very interesting idea. I heard it on WFAN early this afternoon, like literally right as I was getting out of my car. It was, is the solution to ban instant replay? Now, hear me out on this, because all of these accusations kind of revolve around the idea that it's the replay room.
And a camera that was put in place somewhere.
For the purpose of these replay rooms. And this is where all this technology is circling for the team's access, you know? Because these rooms are built for the teams, set up for the teams, approved by the MLB for the teams
that are taking advantage of.
Taking advantage of something that was put in their lap almost.
Do you have like a third party security thing monitor these?
Well, I almost think
you would think they would before.
I would think my solution would be you take the replay rooms away, where teams, it's up to the manager. You know, if he wants to challenge, he has 30 seconds to hold and decide, like talk with his bench coach for a second, be like, do we want to challenge this? Do we not want to challenge this? I think we really should. Like, that was kind of close. Like, I think that should be the solution if you think these replay rooms are getting overbearing, you know? You take them away where teams can't watch video and watch replay in live time. You know, you can maybe have a guy watching the broadcast in the clubhouse, but like, what's he gonna do? Shout down the tunnel? I saw one replay. I think it's good. Maybe, but like, it's not like they can back it up and rewind and play like these teams can do.
And the trick is even if you take the Astros into consideration, that's not, they use a replay room. They set up their own TV
because
they set up their own monitor.
Isn't close enough to the clubhouse or close enough to the dugout.
So you kind of, in my head, there would be the solution off the top of my head is a third party non-affiliate by either, well, MLB would obviously have to commission them, who monitor like every room from the dugout to like the parking garage. If you really want to get fail safe with that,
I think the best solution would just be to remove the aspect of these replay rooms, because you see it all the time where managers just like hold. And they're just sitting there staring at someone waiting to talk to the phone. Like, you can't tell me that's good for pace of play. You can't tell me that's good for the game. It's not. It's boring. No one likes that. Like, I
think the average fan gets annoyed with instant replay anyway.
I get annoyed with instant replay, and when it was first implemented, I was for it because I was like, I'm tired of these terribly bad calls that nobody can do anything about, where the manager just screams at the umpire and the umpire throws them out of the game. I was tired of it. I thought it was stupid. I thought it was just a giant, you know, man measuring contest.
And now, here's the thing that you always point up during the season: if you can't decide in 30 seconds, you keep the call. You know who had the right freaking idea? Did you see the new rules for the XFL?
I honestly have not. I saw that a lot of
Here's
the rules were released this morning, but like I did not get a chance to read them.
Here was one of the rules. You throw the challenge flag, the guy who's looking at it has 60 seconds to decide. Boom. If you didn't sign in 60 seconds, you're staying. And they specifically said, we're not stretching this out and making it overbearing.
Yeah.
And then you look at the incident that happened with Trey Turner in the World Series, which could have been one of the biggest hot messes of baseball history, which sorted itself
If
out.
Anthony Rendon didn't have ice water in his fucking veins. Like,
it's like this shit should not be taking that long.
it shouldn't.
It shouldn't. So I like what you said. 30 seconds. If you can't tell within 30 seconds, you don't have enough evidence to overturn it.
You really don't. And to me, that's the line. It's like, if it's 30 seconds and you can't say, yeah, he was safe, let's just, like, make sure, like, the ball was in the right spot or whatever. Like, I get it taking a hair longer than 30 seconds, but if the umpire can't definitively be like, oh, yeah, he was safe, or, oh, no, he was out, my bad. Like, in 30 seconds... Because, like, most of the time in these calls, it's like, you're talking about literally, like, millimeters being like, is his hand on the bag? Is it not on the bag? Is the ball touching the back of the glove yet? I don't know. Is it touching the lip on his finger on the glove? Oh, I can't tell. Like, this is what we're talking about. I don't care if the ball is, like, here in his glove and he gets called out. Like, does it suck? Yes. Is it really the worst call in the world? No. Like, I don't care. I don't care if the ball's here, like, at half an inch from his glove, and it hasn't quite made contact with the leather yet, and he gets called out because of it.
What drives me nuts is the guy sliding into second base, and there's that fraction of a second of airtime between the bag transferring from his calf to the back of his knee, and the hands... That's one. If the naked eye cannot perceive, like, here's me, instant replay. When I'm coming to my senses with the whole thing the past week was, it's for what the officials neglected to see, not what their naked eye cannot see.
Yes, and I can't blame teams for taking advantage of it.
I would too.
Guess what? If I think his foot came off the bag even the slightest bit, I'm gonna challenge it, because guess what? That's a free out that I don't have to accept in my book. But you know what? If I'm a fan, that's not fun. Sitting there wondering if he's off the bag by a millimeter, and then half the time when they make the call being like, really?
And half the time you sit there and create even more arguments
because they flipped it. Like, half the time the argument is like, oh, they changed the call. But then you're still sitting there going, I still don't know if that's right.
Yeah.
That's not what it was for.
Yeah.
It should be 30 seconds. It's for the imperfect games.
Yeah.
You know, it's for the his foot is a foot off the bag and you called him safe.
It's for no, it was a good couple inches of foul ball.
Yeah, like the Johan Santana no-hitter.
Yeah.
It was a fair ball.
we just got sidetracked. But not really, because this is all relevant. These are problems. These are problems that have all been created.
It's all because we're talking about that the sign stealings are coming from these replay rooms that were implemented for reasons that I don't think they're properly being used for to begin with, and now replay is a whole big thing where it's like it's slowing down the game. You keep talking pace of play, and it's slowing down the game, and it's all related to what's going on right now. Now, I do have one last point that I want to make, because it is in terms of the Yankees before we wrap this up, because we are starting to get a little long here. Now, this has to do with the individual players involved in this situation and how the sign stealings systems and tactics have really affected players, right? We know that it can affect pitchers because they have to remember all these signs, right? And if they get crossed up with the catcher, you're talking wild pitches, which frankly I feel like have gone up across the MLB in the last couple of years, because I feel like it becomes very complicated very quickly to remember all the sequences, all the pitches, all the all the
You know what I'm referring to, right?
yeah.
They keep checking their hats. Yeah,
Yeah,
keep going.
they keep checking their hats. They keep checking their quarterback armbands. They keep checking their back pockets.
Yeah, outfielders have them in their back pocket. They're like almost marching band coordinates. But keep
Yeah,
going.
they seriously are. I would love to see what one of them looks like, to be
Oh, me too.
honest.
Me too. Me too.
But this is all getting so complicated to the players that they need charts and cards and just to keep track of it all. And it all stems from the fact that they're trying to prevent other teams from stealing the stuff that they're trying to steal too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how does this affect the players? Well, pitchers are thinking about other things, not just throwing the damn pitch that they're supposed to half the time. Catchers are trying to remember what freaking pitch is coming on top of putting down the right fingers. And where does this all leave us? I personally think that this has a strong effect on catchers. Because they're the ones that are being held responsible for all of this information. They were responsible for a lot to begin with, but now they're getting so much more that they have to be responsible for. And we've seen it across the MLB. Catchers have been significantly becoming worse and worse and worse and worse hitters. And teams are just accepting it because they're like, well, there's nobody better, because they're putting so much emphasis on defensive catchers to be able to prioritize this information, keep pitch framing, like all of this in check. Now, why am I talking about this? Because the Mets and the Yankees have two very offensive-minded catchers. Wilson Ramos and Gary Sanchez. Both of which are not known for having great defense. Not bad, but not great.
One of ours is known for being terrible, but took big strides forward this past year. But I'm not because he was probably the best catcher by the default of no one was better, which sounds weird when I say it out loud.
I mean, Grandal, you can argue maybe, and you can maybe argue Real Muto. Beyond
the Pudge Rodriguez is long gone. The Pudge Rodriguez is long gone.
The Pudge Rodriguez is long gone. The Jorge Posada is long gone. Hell, the Buster Posey is long gone at this point. Even the Yadier Molina is long gone at this point. I hate to say it because they're still playing, but it's just the reality of it all.
Jonathan Lucroy was also a lot better than he is now.
Jonathan Lucroy, another one. You could just keep going down the list of catchers. With that said, I wonder if this does really go into effect on pitchers getting crossed up with catchers and making catchers look worse defensively than they are. One in particular is Gary Sanchez. It always seems that he gets these bad pass balls in big situations. And I almost wonder if it's got anything to do with the fact that they change signs so often in these high-pressure situations, they just gets crossed up. And then the ball goes flying past him. And frankly, the saves that he does make on wild pitches are almost that much more impressive because he was crossed up to begin with.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder. And now, coming from someone who was a catcher in high school, there's a weird moment when you give one sign, the pitch comes get the other, then you realize it's a different one. I can only imagine how much that is magnified when you start getting into 90+ miles an hour.
On top of the sheer movement on those pitches that these guys have.
I wouldn't.
You know, it's almost a miracle that it doesn't happen more.
Yeah.
With the number of times, like, you'll see it. They change 2, 3, 4 times in, like, 2 at-bats. And it's like, you can't tell me that every time that every single time that a pitch is thrown, the catcher knows what's coming. It's gotta get confusing sometimes.
And now you're limited your mound visits. So now you can't even clear it up. Now you can't even clear that one up.
On top of that, sometimes there's a language barrier.
Yeah.
So how can you clear that up on top of using multiple signs, on top of not being able to go talk to your pitcher? It all gets very complicated very quickly, and I'm not trying to make excuses for I'm really not trying to make excuses for Gary Sanchez. Please don't think that. His pass balls are an issue. Are they an issue that I think deserves him to be benched in these situations? Absolutely not. He's way too valuable of a weapon, and he's way too talented of a player. But you gotta wonder if it's really something that's happening.
Yeah. And it's baseball's a simple game, and we have made a mess of it. by making it way more complex. If we really wanted to, we could go about this for another hour and talk about how this affects the game and why the game is in the quote unquote decline
and how it
that it
skews
supposedly
analytics,
is.
and if you're sign stealing and you have low strikeouts, now it's skewing your analytics, and now teams that may not be sign stealing in a successful way that a team like the Astros are trying to copy that, but they're viewing the wrong statistics. So all of this, we could keep going and going and going about what we're valuing and what we're not valuing and how it's affecting teams. And it can go as far as the numbers on the page that help you evaluate players.
Mm-hmm.
Because do you look at players from 17 and 18 on the Astros and Red Sox now with a grain of salt? Like, are their strikeout numbers really not what they should be? These are all questions you got to ask yourself. Now, the Mets have two former recent Astros on their team with Marisnik and J.D. Davis. It all ties together, because now how much do I rely on the statistics that they've had over the last 2 years? Or do I just use my eyes and watch and say, yeah, they seem like a pretty good player. I don't know.
You make it to the majors, you got to be at least a pretty decent player. But it's a closed system of the most complicated wires and everything, and you can't touch one without disturbing another. Mm-hmm. That's the problem. Every path,
bottom, right?
It's like all roads lead to Rome. Every small path, you're gonna wind back up at bigger issues.
Yep.
I do not know the answer to this.
Yeah, I wish I was at a more deep level in baseball to be able to understand this a little bit more. And it's not because I don't study the game, and it's not because I don't read everything I can, absorb all the information I can. It's because I'm not in that clubhouse. I'm not in that front office. I don't know.
No. If you are someone on the internet and you think you know it,
I'm sorry, you don't. There's so much information that's floating around. There's so much that's being investigated. There's so much that isn't even public.
Keep in mind it's been how many years since we thought the Yankees got in trouble for Apple Watches? It was today we found out they weren't really.
Yeah.
Think about that.
The Apple Watch situation was
common knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Not today we got clarity of it. Today.
And even then it's still convoluted.
And they even specified in the article, they still have not told us how many Apple Watches were confiscated. We still don't even know that.
Yeah.
You could assume at least one.
Actually, you could probably assume more than one if they won't say how many.
Probably. But the only thing you know for a fact is at least one.
Yeah.
Because it existed, so there has to be at least one.
Yep.
It's a mess. This whole thing is a mess that I'm curious whether this is going to make people lose interest in baseball, or whether the dramatic story of it is going to draw even more interest. We're going to see what happens come April.
Yeah, I mean, you can talk about like the Patriots scandal that happened a couple weeks ago too. Did that make people interested, or did that just make people moan and groan? At some point, I feel like this is just going to make people start moaning and groaning, being like, baseball's at it again.
Yep.
But with that said, I don't think we really have much else to throw at the matter for today.
No, I don't.
It's a wild ride. Next time we get any more big information, which could be tomorrow, could be a week from now, could be 2 weeks from now.
Could be when we shut this off.
It really could be when it could be right now, because I'm not looking at my phone.
Yeah.
But we'll certainly get back on and talk to you guys about it. We are not here trying to provide the answers. We are just trying to provide clarity on the questions.
And try to make sense of it for even ourselves.
Other fellow fans, really just how it affects us as fans, because frankly, it's not good.
And the last closing statement I'll leave with, if your opinion on this starts with the phrase, "It's simple," you're wrong. It's not simple.
It's not.
If your
simple.
opinion starts with "it's simple," you're wrong.
We will not say you're wrong very often. Well, we might actually. I don't know. It's a pretty common phrase for us, but we don't tell people they're wrong very often.
Yeah.
But this is certainly not simple, and we certainly are just trying to make heads or tails of this.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see all you guys hopefully tomorrow night when we come up with our regularly scheduled program, which is a review of the decade for both
Review
of
of
our
the
teams.
decade, since there hasn't been much else news, so we hope you're looking forward to that, and we'll catch you all soon. We've been Before the Pitch because we talk baseball, because you sure as hell know ESPN won't.
Adios, amigos. But though, let's see if they talk about this.